if the deepest corners of Moria still hold secrets darker than we can imagine? The air in Moria felt oppressive, thick with the weight of something ancient and forgotten. The walls, once gleaming with the craftsmanship of the dwarves, were now stained with the passage of time, their intricate carvings barely visible under the layers of dust. Gandalf stood at the threshold of the dark chamber, his hand resting on his staff, eyes scanning the deep shadows that seemed to swallow all light. The whispers of long-forgotten beings echoed faintly through the stone, a reminder that this place, though once a marvel of civilization, had become something far darker, a tomb where forgotten powers still stirred. What was it that lingered in these forsaken places? What was it that still clung to the very stone of Moria, from its deepest chambers to its highest halls? There had been rumors, stories of powers long thought destroyed, of evils that had been buried but never fully eradicated. And now Gandalf was here, following the trail of an ancient mystery, one that went deeper than even he had dared to imagine. His thoughts turned back to the past. The First Age, the War of the Valor, and the rise of Melkor, the greatest and most terrifying of the Valor. In his lust for domination, Melkor had nearly shattered Middle-earth itself, twisting its very fabric and leaving scars that still ran deep beneath the earth. The Valor had fought him, and they had won, but the cost was immense. Melkor's defeat had left the world broken, his powers seemingly vanquished, yet something had remained, a lingering influence, an evil that had never truly been undone. What if Melkor's plans, his vision of domination, had not died with him? What if his darkness had taken root in these very places, his power slumbering beneath the earth, waiting to rise again? Gandalf had come to Moria searching for answers, hoping to unravel the threads of a history that had been buried for centuries. But as he ventured deeper into these haunted halls, the truth became harder to deny. There was more here than met the eye. Something old and terrifying was still alive, and it had been waiting for the right moment to return. Gandalf felt a sudden shiver run down his spine. He could feel the darkness press in on him, a weight that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. His heart quickened. The truth of Melkor's near destruction of the world, his betrayal of the Valor, was a story known to all. But what if there was more, something hidden in these ruins, something more dangerous than even Saruman had understood when he made his own dark alliances? What if Melkor's evil, bound within the land itself, had influenced not only Saruman, but others who would come after him? The central question had been haunting Gandalf for weeks, growing stronger with each new discovery. What had Melkor truly intended during his war against the Valor? What if he had not only sought power, but a permanent hold over the world, a pact that tied his very spirit to the land? This mystery was no longer just an ancient tale of good versus evil. It was a living force, buried beneath the surface, waiting waiting to awaken. And Gandalf knew that it was only a matter of time before that darkness returned. Gandalf's investigation into the depths of Middle-earth had begun in earnest after Saruman's betrayal. The White Wizard's lust for power had been clear, but Gandalf had begun to suspect that there was something deeper, something older, that had influenced Saruman's fall. Saruman's obsession with the Palantir, his desire to control the flow of knowledge and power, seemed tied to something beyond simple ambition. Gandalf had always known about Melkor's influence on Middle-earth's early history, but as he studied the records and remnants of the past, he began to piece together a darker truth. Melkor had been the greatest and most terrifying of the Valar, a being whose ambition had shattered the world. His desire to dominate Middle-earth had led him to war against the Valar and the Elves. And though he had been defeated, his influence did not die with him. The scars he left behind had persisted, even beyond his fall. The records he uncovered spoke of the Balrogs, creatures of flame and shadow that were born of Melkor's power. These creatures had once been thought to have been destroyed with Melkor's defeat, but whispers from ancient sources spoke of a lingering presence, a dark force that had not been fully extinguished. Gandalf knew that the Balrogs were not mere servants. They were a manifestation of the power Melkor had sought to harness, and their presence in Middle-earth was a reminder of the evil that had nearly broken the world. The more Gandalf uncovered, the clearer it became that Saruman's obsession with dark power was not merely personal ambition. His studies into the ancient forces of Middle-earth, his secretive dealings with dark magic, and his growing obsession with the Palantir were all signs of a much larger, more insidious force at work. Gandalf began to suspect that Saruman's betrayal had been influenced by something far beyond his desire for the One Ring or his envy of Sauron's power. It was as if Saruman had been lured by an ancient force that had been waiting for centuries to awaken. As Gandalf pieced together these clues, he realized that Melkor's dark influence had not only affected Saruman. It had shaped the very land, its history, and its people. The deep places of the earth, the forgotten ruins, were not just remnants of past civilizations. They were the scars of Melkor's war against the world, the remnants of a darkness that had never truly faded. Gandalf's search for answers took him to the forgotten ruins of Utumno, Melkor's ancient fortress. Once thought destroyed, it had left behind a legacy of evil that had seeped into the very land itself. The ruins were said to hold the secrets of Melkor's early attempts to shape the world. And Gandalf believed that the key to understanding Saruman's dark dealings lay hidden within its depths. But as Gandalf ventured deeper into the ancient places, the mystery deepened. The darkness was not gone. It was still there, hiding, waiting for the right moment to strike. The deeper Gandalf went, the more he realized that the evil Melkor Melkor had unleashed was not only tied to Saruman, but to something much older, something that could once again break the world. Gandalf knew that he was on the edge of uncovering something far more dangerous than even he had anticipated. He had to be careful. His every step in the forgotten places of Middle-earth was fraught with danger. But the more he discovered, the more he understood that this was no ordinary search for knowledge. This was the unraveling of a secret that had been buried for millennia. The path ahead was clear. He had to continue his investigation into the ruins of Utumno to uncover the truths that had been hidden for so long. But as he prepared to delve deeper, he knew that the consequences of what he uncovered could be far greater than he ever imagined. The ancient evil that had nearly broken Middle-earth once could return. The past had a way of reaching into the present, and Gandalf feared that the darkness he was seeking might have already awakened. In the distance, he could feel it, an unsettling presence, an ancient force that had never truly left. It was no longer just a story of the past. The shadows were stirring. Middle-earth stood on the brink once again. The ancient evil was still out there, and its return was inevitable. Gandalf sat hunched over the worn scrolls, his eyes tracing the faded runes as if they held the key to a mystery that had haunted him for years. The ancient texts he'd gathered spoke of many things, of great battles and the power struggles of the Valar. But now, as he pored over them, one thing became clear. Saruman's fall was not the result of simple ambition. It was the consequence of a much darker force, a force that had been present long before Saruman's betrayal, and that still clung to the very land itself. It wasn't just about Saruman's lust for knowledge. No, this was far deeper. Melkor, the first Dark Lord, had left more than scars upon the world. His presence, his malice, had seeped into the very fabric of Middle-earth, binding itself to the land in ways no one had understood. It wasn't just that Melkor had sought to conquer. He had sought to bind his very essence to the world, to make it so that even his defeat could never truly erase his presence. Gandalf had suspected this for some time, but now, as the pieces of the puzzle began to come together, the true scope of the evil became more apparent. Melkor had not simply sought domination. He had desired permanence. His dark spirit had been embedded in the earth, like a wound that would never heal. The land itself had been scarred by his influence, and though the Valar had defeated him, they had failed to rid the world of his essence. And now, it seemed, Saruman's obsession with power had unknowingly tied him to that very evil. Gandalf paused, his finger tracing a particularly ominous passage. It was from an ancient text found deep within the forgotten ruins of a lost city. The text spoke of oaths made in darkness, binding one's soul to a greater force. Saruman's lust for the One Ring, his desire to rival Sauron, was not just about power. It was about something far darker. He had unknowingly bound his soul to the remnants of Melkor's influence, and that pact had led him down a path from which there was no return. As Gandalf's thoughts swirled with these grim realizations, his mind returned to his encounters with Saruman, the White Wizard's growing obsession with the Palantir, his increasing isolation, and his secretive dealings. These were all signs of something more sinister. Gandalf had always known Saruman was ambitious, but he had underestimated the depths of his corruption. It wasn't just Saruman's ambition that had driven him. It was the influence of Melkor's remnants, quietly twisting him, leading him to betray not just the free peoples of Middle-earth, but his very soul. Gandalf couldn't help but reflect on the ancient battles of the First Age, the War of the Valor, the rise of Morgoth, and the defeat of the Dark Lord. All these events had shaped the world, leaving scars that could never be healed. But one thing had always lingered. Melkor's evil had not been entirely eradicated. Morgoth had fallen, but his influence had not died with him. The remnants of his power had clung to the world, and over the ages it had found vessels to carry it forward. Sauron had been the most obvious of these vessels, but Saruman, in his own way, had become a vessel of that same dark power. Through Gandalf's visions, he was transported back in time to the First Age, to the fall of Utumno, Melkor's fortress. He saw Melkor, dark and terrible, standing at the heart of his stronghold, commanding the forces of darkness to do his bidding. Gandalf saw the ancient oaths made in that dark place, oaths that bound Melkor's followers to his will, and he saw how Sauron had been one of those who had sworn allegiance to the Dark Lord. But then the vision shifted. It showed Saruman, in his early days as an Istar, full of curiosity and ambition, studying the ancient texts and secrets of the First Age. Gandalf saw the moment when Saruman had first come into contact with the remnants of Melkor's power. It had been a subtle thing, a whisper in the dark, a promise of knowledge and power that seemed to call to him. At first, Saruman had resisted, but over time, he had been drawn deeper into Melkor's legacy, until eventually he had made his own dark pact. Gandalf felt a chill as the vision continued. He saw Saruman's growing obsession with the Palantir, his desire to control the fate of Middle-earth, and how that desire had led him to secretly ally with the remnants of Melkor's dark power. It was not a decision made lightly, but one made in the pursuit of ultimate knowledge, in the belief that controlling the dark forces would allow him to achieve greater power than even Sauron. But this power came at a cost. Saruman had given a part of his soul to the darkness, just as Melkor had done before him. Gandalf was struck by the realization that Saruman's fall had not been a simple act of pride. It had been the result of manipulation by an ancient evil that still lingered beneath the surface. Saruman had thought he could control the darkness, but instead he had been consumed by betrayal was not just an act of personal ambition, it was the consequence of a curse, a binding pact with the remnants of Morgoth's evil that had been set in motion long before Saruman's time. As Gandalf continued his research, the mystery deepened. He learned that the remnants of Melkor's influence were not only tied to Saruman, but were still active in the world. The darkness that had once nearly broken Middle-earth had not gone away. It was simply waiting for the right moment to rise again. The forces that Saruman had encountered, the knowledge he had sought, were all part of a much larger, insidious plan, one that had been set in motion during the First Age. The darkness was not just an ancient relic. It was a living, breathing force that had been waiting to return. And now Gandalf knew it was stirring once again. With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, Gandalf knew that the time for action was upon them. The forces of darkness that had once nearly destroyed Middle-earth were not gone. They were still here, and they had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Saruman's betrayal was part of a much larger design, a design that had its roots in the first days of Middle-earth and had shaped the course of history ever since. Gandalf, Aragorn, Frodo, and a handful of trusted companions set out on a perilous journey into Moria, where Gandalf believed the heart of Melkor's influence still lay hidden. The path ahead would not be easy. Moria, once a place of grandeur and prosperity, had become a tomb, haunted by the remnants of a darkness that refused to die. Gandalf knew that whatever they found in Moria would change the course of history. They were not simply searching for the truth. They were racing against time to uncover a hidden evil that could destroy everything they held dear. As they made their way deeper into the ancient city, Gandalf's mind was filled with the knowledge that this journey was not just about uncovering the past. It was about confronting the darkness that had never truly left Middle-earth. They were about to confront the legacy of Melkor's evil, and the stakes could not be higher. The journey ahead was fraught with peril, but Gandalf knew that it was the only way to stop the forces that were stirring in the dark. They must uncover the truth, or they would face the consequences of Melkor's curse, a curse that had been waiting for this moment to break the world once more. The air in Moria grew colder, and the deeper Gandalf and his companions ventured, the more oppressive the silence became. Every step echoed through the cavernous halls, amplifying their unease. They had descended far into the heart of the ancient dwarven city, but instead of the expected emptiness, something far darker awaited them. Strange markings began to appear on the walls, runes unfamiliar to Gandalf, their meanings hidden by layers of time and dust. Yet the shapes were not random. They felt deliberate, a form of writing that whispered of ancient power and forgotten pacts. The whispering wind that swept through the hallways sounded too deliberate, too intentional. It seemed to follow them, brushing past their faces with a chill that didn't belong. though the very stones were alive, watching them, waiting for something. Gandalf, despite his vast knowledge and experience, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being led into something far older and more malevolent than he could have ever anticipated. Frodo, walking beside him, glanced up. His face was pale, his hand gripping the ring tightly. "Gandalf," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind, "do you feel that? Something is here." Gandalf nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Yes, Frodo, something dark lingers here, something that should have stayed buried." They continued deeper into the labyrinthine passages, the air growing thicker with every step. As they rounded a corner, Gandalf's eyes caught something gleaming faintly in the dim light, an artifact, half buried in the rubble. It was a relic from a forgotten age, its form twisted by time, but still exuding a presence of malevolence. The moment Gandalf set his eyes on it, a chill ran through him, one that seeped into his very bones. His instincts screamed that this was no ordinary relic. It was a force tied to Melkor's ancient power. "Step back," Gandalf commanded, his voice low and steady. "This artifact is no simple treasure. It carries the weight of a dark past." He cautiously approached it, wary of its pull. His hand hovered over the artifact, the dark energy surrounding it growing stronger, pulsating like a heartbeat that echoed through the chamber. Gandalf took a deep breath, his fingers brushing against its surface. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy shot through him, a torrent of ancient memories and power flooding his mind. His vision blurred, and he was transported back through time. Gandalf's vision shifted, and he found himself standing in the heart of a great, blackened fortress. The walls of Utumno loomed around him, vast and filled with darkness. He could hear the distant echoes of Melkor's voice, deep and rumbling, resonating with an ancient power that shook the foundations of the world. Gandalf's mind raced as he recognized the scene. This was the moment of Melkor's pact, a moment that had been sealed in the deepest shadows of time. He saw Melkor, not as the twisted, corrupted being he had become, but as the mighty, original valor, standing before an assembly of dark beings. His eyes burned with a power that seemed to crackle in the air. "I bind my soul to this world," Melkor declared, his voice carrying a weight that Gandalf could feel in his very bones. "In exchange for the power to rule it, I will tie my essence to the earth itself. I shall be part of it. I shall never fade." The beings before him bowed in allegiance, their forms shadows and fire. In the background, the silhouette of a mighty creature stood, a creature Gandalf recognized as a Balrog, its fiery eyes glowing with the same malicious fire that had once consumed the world. The vision swirled, and Gandalf saw Melkor's followers, including Sauron, bent to his will, their spirits tethered to the earth, bound by the dark pact. He saw Melkor's corruption spread like a plague, twisting every everything it touched, leaving scars on Middle-earth that would never heal. Suddenly, the vision shifted again, this time showing Saruman. The white wizard, once a paragon of wisdom, stood in a dark chamber, his hand reaching for the Palantir, an object of great power. Gandalf watched in horror as Saruman's expression darkened with each passing moment. His desire for power had already led him astray, but now it seemed as though he was taking the final step. Gandalf could see the darkness creeping over Saruman's heart, the same darkness that had claimed Melkor's soul centuries before. Saruman's voice echoed in Gandalf's mind. I can feel the power of the past. It calls to me. It offers me dominion over all. Gandalf stumbled back, gasping for air as the vision faded. His mind was reeling. The truth of the artifact had been revealed to him in a rush, Saruman's fall. His pact with the remnants of Melkor's evil was not born of simple ambition. No, it was far darker. Saruman had, in his obsession for power, unknowingly tied his soul to the same forces that had once nearly destroyed Middle-earth. He had been manipulated, just as Sauron had, by Melkor's curse that had seeped into the very earth itself. The realization struck Gandalf hard. Saruman's lust for control had led him to the very same fate as Melkor, becoming a vessel for the darkness that had once sought to break the world. And now, that darkness was stirring once again. The silence that had descended on the group was shattered by a deep, rumbling growl. The ground beneath them shook, and the temperature dropped. Gandalf's eyes widened as he turned to face the shadows in the corners of the chamber. The very walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. From the darkness, something emerged, massive, fiery eyes gleamed in the shadows, and the air filled with a deafening roar. Gandalf's heart sank as he saw the figure emerge. The Balrog, ancient, twisted, and fueled by the remnants of Melkor's power, was alive. The creature's fiery body crackled with rage, and the very earth beneath its feet trembled. By the valor, it's real, Gandalf muttered under his breath. The Balrog's fiery whip cracked the air, and its massive wings unfurled, sending gusts of hot air through the chamber. The creature was not only a remnant of Melkor's power, it was a manifestation of the curse that had once nearly broken the world. We must fight it, Aragorn said, drawing his sword, but Gandalf raised a hand. No, Gandalf said, his voice firm but grim.